The sound of metal creaking open was louder than my husband's lies. 30 years of marriage unraveled in an instant as I crouched on the attic floor, surrounded by dust motes dancing in the shaft of afternoon light. Just moments before, I had been organizing old boxes, intending nothing more than a simple spring cleaning. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. There it was, a bulky, rust-speckled safe, camouflaged beneath decades of forgotten junk. I wiped the grime away from the dial, heart pounding with a sense of discovery mingled with inexplicable dread. It felt bizarrely like a relic, both from the past and of my present, testing the strength of my fingers against its stubborn, rusty edges. With trembling hands, I turned the dial, each click echoing through the attic silence, resonating deeper within my chest as though counting down to a revelation. By sheer luck or perhaps divine intervention, the latch finally gave way, and the heavy door swung open to reveal not the treasures of forgotten wealth but rather an assortment of yellowing envelopes and a faded leather-bound diary. Plucking out one of the envelopes, I noticed my husband's handwriting, all too familiar but suddenly alien in this context. My name was scrawled across it, and a date from nearly 3 decades ago. My initial excitement at the prospect of a forgotten gift was quickly supplanted by a cold dread as I began to read. Elaine, it began simply, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. The words pricked my skin like tiny needles as I devoured the letters, each more shocking and more painful than the last. My vision blurred, tears loosing themselves from the confines of my eyes as a sob escaped my lips. Elaine, are you okay? John called from downstairs, innocently unaware of the tempest brewing in my heart. I hastily wiped my eyes and sniffed back the welling emotions. Fine. Just cleaning. My voice betrayed none of the turmoil churning within. With deliberate care, I replaced the letters and diary, closing the safe firmly, as if that could contain the whirlwind of chaos. In the days that followed, I tried to keep appearances, a Herculean task as I grappled with the weight of John's betrayal. The mundane routines of life passed by like a dull film, scenes playing out on a loop while my mind was elsewhere, anchored in the past, untangling the threads of deceit John had spun. I needed clarity, a plan, and above all, an ally. That's when I called Sarah, my college confidant whose intuition was as sharp as her wit. We hadn't spoken in years, the distance between our lives bridged only by sporadic holiday cards. But some friendships were forged in fire, impervious to time or neglect. Over coffee, I spilled years of emotions, the unrelenting torrent from a dam long sealed. He lied, Sarah. All these years, I thought we were happy. My voice wavered, the tremor indicative of an emotion teetering between anger and devastation. Sarah listened intently, her presence an anchor in a churning sea of uncertainty. You have every right to feel deceived, Elaine, she said, her voice steady yet laced with empathy. But you need answers before you decide what comes next. Her words were a balm, soothing the raw edges of my broken heart. Together, we pored over the documents, an array of financial statements, photographs, and incriminating correspondences that painted a picture more vivid than any nightmare. Every page bore testimony to a life I was oblivious to, a parallel existence where love was counterfeit and trust an illusion. Images of John with another family surfaced, the shadowy outlines of 2 children echoing the life we had built, yet starkly separate. As I sat alone later, the remnants of my life strewn like ashes around the kitchen, I realized the betrayal went deeper than infidelity or secrecy. It cut to the core of my identity, challenging every decision, every memory now tainted by his deceit. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the floor, I made a silent vow. This chapter would not define me. The truth would come to light, and justice, in whatever form, would be served. Confronting John was a daunting notion. The man I had built my life with was also the man who had meticulously dismantled it without my knowing. As the days shuffled past in a haze of turmoil, I grew more resolute in my decision to seek the truth directly from its source, to look him in the eyes and demand answers. The evening came when the weight of unspoken words pressed too heavily on my chest. After dinner, with the dishwasher humming in the background, I seized the fleeting courage that coursed through my veins. "John, we need to talk," I said, my voice unexpectedly steady. He glanced up, a flicker of concern flitting across his features. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I swallowed hard, my resolve hardening. "No, it isn't." The gravity of my tone set the room on edge. "I found something in the attic, John. A safe. It was filled with things you never told me, things that change everything." His face blanched, blood draining away as if I'd struck him. The silence stretched between us, a chasm that had existed long before this moment but was now glaringly obvious. "Elaine, I can explain," he began, but I cut him off. "Explain?" I echoed, incredulous. "How do you explain a second family? How do you explain living a lie for decades?" He reached for me, but I recoiled, retreating from his touch that felt so familiar yet foreign. "Elaine, please," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "It wasn't what you think." "You what?" I demanded, anger boiling over. "You had your cake and ate it too. You made fools of us all." His shoulders sagged, and for the first time, I saw a man stripped of bravado, exposed in his fear and shame. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted it to get this far." The admission was a gut punch, knocking the breath from my lungs. I had expected denial or excuses, but not this raw confession of wrongdoing. Tears blurred my vision, the sting of betrayal momentarily giving way to a wash of sadness so profound it threatened to pull me under. "Why, John? Why do this to us?" My voice wavered, tinged with both heartbreak and a yearning to understand the madness. He sighed deeply, eyes cast downward. "It started before us, Elaine. I was entangled in something, and I couldn't find a way out without destroying everything. I didn't know how to tell you. I was a coward." His words hung in the air, each syllable a testament to the complex web of lies he had woven. Yet, despite the turmoil of emotions warring within me, there was clarity in his admission. He had been a coward, yes, but the damage was not just his to bear. Our lives had been built on shaky foundations, illusions I had been complicit in, blinded by trust. I turned away, needing distance to collect my thoughts lest they unravel completely. The kitchen, a place once filled with laughter and shared meals, seemed now a battleground littered with the remnants of our life together. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows as if echoing the storm within. In that moment, I felt the weight of every decision I had ever made, culminating in this confrontation of truths I wished were lies. Days bled into one another as I wrestled with the implications of John's confession. Anger simmered beneath the surface, an ever-present reminder of the life I had unknowingly shared. But beneath the anger lay a deep well of sorrow, a mourning for the life I had lost and a future that now seemed irreparably altered. My conversations with Sarah became lifelines, her unwavering support a salve for my wounded heart. "You need to do what's best for you, Elaine," she advised during one of our many talks. "This is about reclaiming your life on your terms." Her words resonated with a truth I wasn't ready to face, that after years of shared history, I had to redefine my future alone. Yet, there was power in that realization, a kind of liberation in knowing that I could choose what came next. It was during one of these soul-searching nights that I stumbled back into the attic, seeking clarity amid the chaos. The safe stood there, hauntingly familiar, yet now just a shell that had once held my past and shattered it. With careful hands, I retrieved John's diary, the leather soft and worn from years of secrets. Seated in a dusty corner, I began to read, delving into the narrative of a man torn between love and obligation, between truth and deceit. His words painted a picture of regret, a longing for redemption that was palpable and deeply human. As the night wore on, I found myself at a crossroads, torn between the desire for justice and the need for healing, between the sweetness of revenge and the balm of forgiveness. It was a choice only I could make, a decision that would shape the rest of my days. But the story was not yet finished. There were questions still unanswered, paths unexplored, and beneath it all, the flicker of hope that perhaps, even amid pain, there could be peace. The journey was far from over, and though the ending lay shrouded in uncertainty, I was ready to face it head-on, no longer a passive observer but an active participant in my own life story. As I slipped the diary back into the safe, the attic seemed to grow colder, accentuating the chill that had settled within me. The weight of John's secrets, his life etched in ink, was now a burden I carried too. Yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, a dawning realization emerged: this wasn't just a story of his deception. It was about my journey of rediscovery and resilience. In the days that followed, I found myself oscillating between fierce determination and abject despair. Simple activities became acts of willpower, as everyday life demanded my attention while my mind lingered on the precipice of change. I busied myself with tasks that once brought normalcy. But even as I folded laundry or washed dishes, the questions persisted like an unending echo, demanding answers, demanding resolution. Sarah, ever present, was my rock. "Elaine," she said one afternoon over the phone, her voice as soothing as a warm embrace, "why don't you take a break? Get away for a bit. Sometimes distance gives us perspective." The thought was appealing, but guilt gnawed at me, guilt for needing respite, guilt for contemplating abandonment of a life I had vowed to cherish in both sickness and health. But beneath that guilt was a yearning so intense it overrode the static of my conscience. Perhaps Sarah was right. Perhaps what I needed was a change of scenery, a moment away from the walls that had borne witness to both love and betrayal. The decision made, I packed a small bag and informed John with a succinctness that brooked no argument. "I'm leaving for a few days. I need space," I said, meeting his eyes for the briefest of moments before turning away. "Elaine, please," he began, but I silenced him with a raised hand. "This isn't about you, John. It's about me finding clarity." As I drove away from our home, the landscape unfurled like pages of a book, each mile a line of text, each turn a punctuation mark in the narrative of my life. I chose the mountain retreat where Sarah and I had spent carefree weekends in our youth, a place untouched by the shadows that now colored my world. The cabin was rustic and welcoming, nestled amidst towering pines and shimmering streams. I arrived at dusk, the setting sun casting long, golden shadows that danced upon the wooden floorboards. As I settled in, a profound silence enveloped me, a comforting blanket that cocooned my fractured spirit. In the solitude, I began to untangle my thoughts, knitting together fragments of memory, piecing together the mosaic of my life beyond John's betrayal. Anger, once a storm, began to dissipate, leaving in its wake a reflective calmness. I realized I had spent so much time thinking about John, his reasons, his mistakes, that I had neglected my own needs. The following days passed in a blur of introspection and gentle healing. I walked for hours through the forest trails, the crunch of leaves underfoot a rhythmic distraction that allowed my mind to wander. At night, the stars seemed especially bright, tiny pinpricks of light in an endless expanse, offering comfort and perspective. One evening, sitting by the fire with a glass of wine in hand, I made a list, a tangible acknowledgement of my feelings and goals. On one side, I wrote what I had lost, on the other, what I hoped to gain. The exercise was cathartic, a visual representation of the balance I sought to achieve in my turbulent world. It became clear to me that while John's actions had shattered the foundation of our marriage, they hadn't destroyed me. I had the power to rebuild, to find joy and fulfillment in the life still unwritten. And as my resolve strengthened, so did my clarity. A few days into my retreat, I received a call from Sarah. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice a lifeline reaching across the miles. "Better," I replied honestly. "I think I'm starting to see things differently. Like there's a path forward, even if I'm still figuring out what it looks like." "I'm glad to hear that," she said, relief evident in her tone. "Remember, you're not alone in this." Hanging up, I felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude for Sarah's unwavering support. Her friendship had been a constant through the flux of time, a reminder that life, despite its complexities, still held beauty and connection. As my time at the cabin drew to a close, I reflected on the journey I had undertaken, not just the physical one to the mountains, but the deeper, emotional voyage towards self-discovery and healing. I felt stronger, more centered, and ready to face whatever lay ahead. Packing my things, I left the cabin with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying with me the lessons learned in solitude. The road home stretched before me, an unspooling ribbon leading back to a world where uncertainty still lingered. Yet despite the challenges that awaited, I felt ready. I had reclaimed a part of myself I thought lost, forged anew in the crucible of betrayal. And though the future remained uncertain, I was no longer afraid to confront it. Upon reaching home, the familiarity was both daunting and comforting. John was waiting, eyes shadowed with apprehension, yet there was also a flicker of hope, as if he sensed the shift in my demeanor. "Elaine," he said softly, his voice weighted with sincerity. "Welcome back." I nodded, acknowledging both his greeting and the deeper import of my return. It was time to move forward, time to shape my life anew, guided by the lessons of the past but not encumbered by them. The story was far from over, but I was finally ready to write the next chapter on my own terms. As I stepped through the threshold of our home, the air felt different, charged with the energy of new beginnings, yet tinged with the residue of past hurt. John stood before me, his expression a mixture of relief and trepidation, as if he knew that this was the moment our lives would pivot toward the future, for better or worse. We sat down in the living room, the same space where countless memories had been made, both cherished and now tainted by betrayal. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the conversation that needed to happen settle over me like a well-worn coat. "John," I began, my voice steady and calm, "I've had a lot of time to think. About us, about everything that's happened. I've realized that you weren't the only one living in a world of assumptions. I was too, believing that life was perfect when, in reality, nothing is ever flawless." He nodded, eyes brimming with emotion, a silent acknowledgement of the truth we had both been circling around. "Elaine, I know I've hurt you in ways I can't ever fully comprehend. I'm so sorry, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I want to make things right, if that's even possible." His sincerity was palpable, a raw transparency that hadn't been there before all of this. And in that moment, I understood, he was as broken as I was, as human in his failings. "I appreciate that, John. Truly, I do. But the truth is, I need to understand fully before we can even think about moving forward," I replied. "What do you need from me?" he asked, a hopeful edge to his tone. "I need to meet them, your other family. I need to hear their side of the story, to fill in the pieces that are missing from this shattered puzzle." John's face registered shock, but he quickly nodded, understanding the necessity of my request. "Of course. I'll arrange it." The prospect of meeting them was daunting, yet it was a step I had to take. It was the only way to confront the reality of everything, to humanize the shadows that had loomed large over our lives. A week later, we drove to a small suburban neighborhood, its quiet streets lined with neatly kept houses. As we approached the modest home where John's other family lived, my heart pounded with a mix of dread and resolve. He gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, and even in this complicated moment, it brought a sense of much-needed comfort. At the door, a woman answered, a few years younger than me, with kind, wary eyes. This was Kara, John's second wife. The pain of betrayal was mirrored in her expression, a silent acknowledgement of our shared suffering. "Elaine," she greeted, her voice soft but steady. "I want to thank you for coming. I'm sure this isn't easy for you." "Or for you," I interjected, offering a small, strained smile. "But it's necessary." We sat down together in a modest living room that was both unfamiliar and intimidating in its implications. Kara's children, John's other children, joined us, their presence a stark, living testament to the dual lives that had been led. As the conversation unfolded, I found myself listening more than speaking, absorbing the story of John's other life from their perspectives. I saw their humanity, their struggles echoed in my own, and slowly, piece by piece, the puzzle began to take shape. Kara's voice occasionally broke with emotion, just as mine had so often done in the past months. "We didn't know," she explained, her eyes pleading for understanding. I didn't know about you until recently. It's been difficult. I nodded, empathy weaving a fragile thread between us. I can imagine. It's been hard for all of us. The children, a boy and a girl in their teens, appeared subdued, caught in the complexities of their father's choices. Their innocence in the machinations of adult deceit was clear, and my heart ached for them, recognizing their pain as an echo of my own. By the end of the conversation, something shifted within me. The anger that had fueled my resolve softened, replaced by a burgeoning understanding of the vast complexities of human emotion and fallibility. This was not about revenge anymore, it was about healing. As we left, Kara and I exchanged a tentative embrace, a fragile bridge spanning the chasm of shared sorrow and hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a mixture of gratitude and relief. The drive home was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. John's hand found mine again, and I let it linger, sensing that this was the beginning of something new, not a reconciliation, necessarily, but a willingness to explore the paths we might forge as individuals and, perhaps, tentatively, as partners navigating unknown terrain. "Elaine," John spoke finally, his voice full of vulnerability. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends. Even if that means letting you go." I turned to him, tears pooling in my eyes, a reflection of the sincerity that had drawn us together all those years ago. "Thank you, John," I said, my voice trembling yet sure. "We have a long road ahead, but maybe we can walk it together, in whatever form that takes." The horizon stretched out before us, uncertain yet promising, and in that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. It was an acceptance of life's imperfections, an embrace of its unpredictable journey. The story wasn't ending, it was beginning anew, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for whatever came next.